Hey guys, I thought I would do my prediction video for the boxing match that's coming up on May 2nd between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao. I've been a huge follower of both for the last however long in their career. You know, they've both been around for a long time now. I'm a huge boxing fan, and this is certainly going to be the biggest fight in boxing history. The last time I can remember a fight of this magnitude was probably back with Lewis and Tyson. That fight was huge. It had this same kind of feel to it. Obviously, money changes as the years go by, and I'm sure if that fight between Lewis and Tyson was happening in this day and age, it would be doing the type of money that this fight is doing. But obviously, money-wise, this fight is going to be the biggest of all time. I think it's going to, like, in total come up to, you know, like $500 million or something like that. But yeah, it's a crazy amount of money, and I just want to, first, before I talk about my prediction of the fight and who I think is going to win and why and how, I want to talk about both of the guys' careers leading up to this and where it kind of started from. And the whole talk of Manny versus Floyd came about around about the time that they were both fighting Oscar De La Hoya. So if we go back to early 2007, Floyd Mayweather was fighting Oscar De La Hoya, which was Mayweather's big breakthrough fight. You know, he was never really until that point seen as this huge pay-per-view draw. It was the fight with Oscar De La Hoya that pushed him over. It was a really, really close 12-round decision, which Floyd came out on top of. He just had more accurate punches. You know, a lot of De La Hoya's punches were kind of hitting the arms and stuff, and I think the judges just went for the sheer accuracy and pinpoint skill, and just the way Mayweather was landing his shots. They were so clean that night, and De La Hoya he kind of started off using the jab and got a lot of success with that, and then he just stopped using it in the later rounds, which a lot of people were point to maybe the big downfall of that fight for him. But yeah, back at that time, Floyd had the two biggest fights of his career, which were Oscar De La Hoya, and then after that came Ricky Hatton, which he won both fights. He stopped Hatton in the later rounds with a TKO and victory, and yeah, they were his two big breakthrough fights to becoming this huge pay-per-view star. Believe it or not, before that, you know, he had great fights with people like Zab Judah, Diego Corrales, Jose Luis Castillo and stuff, Arturo Gatti, but, you know, they were the fights, De La Hoya and Hatton, that pushed him over the edge. Now, if we go and take a look at Manny Pacquiao, he also fought De La Hoya a little bit later, just like the next year, 2008, I think it was. He fought De La Hoya, and then he went on to fight Ricky Hatton as well. His fights were much different though. He obliterated De La Hoya, just throwing a bombardment of punches, and just De La Hoya just couldn't get off any punches that night. And Pacquiao just beat him until he retired on his chair. And then the fight with Hatton, he knocked Hatton out in one of the best knockouts we've seen in recent boxing years, in the second round. So when people were looking for the next guy to beat Floyd, because every year people are looking for this new guy who's going to be the one to finally beat Mayweather, and everyone at the time was like, oh god, Pacquiao, he's going to be the one to do it, he's going to be the one to take Mayweather out, because they were looking at the comparison between Floyd's two biggest fights, you know, with Hatton and De La Hoya, and the way that he dealt with them. A close 12-round decision with De La Hoya, and then I think it was in the 8th or 9th round he TKO'd Hatton, but yeah, but it wasn't as good as, you know, if you look at Manny's performances. You know, he just went in there, obliterated De La Hoya, just had him in the corner half the time, just pounding away at him, and then knocking Hatton out with ease in the second round. But what a lot of people don't realise is when you look back there, you can see that De La Hoya is completely weight drained. He had to cut so much weight, and he was just shot, he was dehydrated and everything for that fight. He was a shell of what he was for the Mayweather fight. And if you look at Hatton, Mayweather is obviously a defensive fighter, so he doesn't go out there attacking straight away. Hatton leaves himself open. Mayweather doesn't want to take risks, so he's happy just to wait until the later rounds and pick him off, whereas Manny just went straight in for the kill and got the big punch. So a lot of people were looking at that and saying, look what Pacquiao's done with these two guys compared to Mayweather. That means Pacquiao must be better than Mayweather. And that was like the big thing that kind of really kicked the whole Mayweather versus Pacquiao debate off. And then throughout the years, you know, they've both went on to face numerous opponents. A lot of the opponents they've faced have been the similar opponents to each other. Excuse me. And so I'll just talk about who they've both faced since then. So after the De La Hoya and Hatton fights, Mayweather went on to face Juan Manuel Marquez, which he won a unanimous decision by. He completely dominated Marquez and looked fantastic in that fight. He then went on to fight Shane Mosley, where he was rocked in the second round of that fight twice, and it's probably the biggest scare of his career. You know, he wobbled and looked really unsteady, but then he came back to completely dominate the fight and showed his resilience. He then had that weird situation with Victor Ortiz in like the 4th round or the 5th round or something like that, where Ortiz headbutted Mayweather and then the ref separated them, and then he brought them back together, and Ortiz kept wanting to kiss and hug Mayweather and apologise, and then Mayweather just knocked him out. He then went on to have a really good close match with Miguel Cotto, but he was just picking Miguel Cotto off a lot cleaner, and it was like the first time we really saw Mayweather busted up a bit. He had a bloodied nose. It was like the first time I think we've actually seen him bloodied. He then had a fight with the ghost Robert Guerrero, who really is a ghost because he wasn't in the match at all. Then he had Saul Canelo Alvarez, which was a really, really big hyped up fight, but I think a lot of the boxing experts understood that Mayweather was going to dominate that, because if you look at Canelo, he's got an issue with his stamina. I don't know if it's just who he's training with or his training regimen, I don't know, but after about the 6th round, he really gasses out and is a lot slower and just a lot less active throughout the fight, and also his inexperience. He's a young guy, and I know he's got like a crazy amount of fights under his belt for such a young guy, but a lot of them are, you know, just bums down in Mexico where he's just been fed these, you know, like nobodies. So the experience that he's got hasn't really came until recently years, I would say, for Canelo. He then had 2 fights with Marcos Maidana. Now, the first fight with Marcos Maidana I thought was extremely close, and I would even go as far as to say it had shades of the old Jose Luis Castillo first fight, where a lot of people believe Castillo won the first fight against Mayweather. I felt very similar with watching the first fight with Maidana. Second fight, Mayweather picked him off, and then, of course, that was what has led to his next fight, which will be Manny Pacquiao. If we go and look at Manny Pacquiao, after Oscar De La Hoya and Ricky Hatton, he had a fight with Miguel Cotto, where he was a lot more dominant than Mayweather was. You know, he had Cotto running for the last few rounds of the match, you know, and even wanting to, and I'm not saying running in the sense that he was trying to box. He wasn't like boxing, he was actually like on his foot, kind of running a little bit, just to avoid a beating and avoid getting knocked out. He then had Joshua Clottey, which was a pretty straightforward, just Pacquiao pounding away at this brick defence of Clottey. Then had a really good fight with Antonio Margarito, and this fight is key because he beat up the really, really big, strong Margarito and took a lot of heavy punches, and I think this was the last time where I truly felt like Pacquiao could beat Mayweather. I think this was the last fight I saw of Pacquiao where I really felt like he had that ferocity, that anger, that, you know, that body language that suggests he's in there for the kill. A lot of his fights after this, you know, he just looked a bit more timid. He then went on to fight Shane Mosley, where he kind of couldn't, I don't know if it was Shane Mosley's awkward style, but he just couldn't really get to him. He beat Shane Mosley, but he he didn't look great in that fight. He then had the next 3 fights are very important. He then had his 3rd fight with Juan Manuel Marquez, which he was awarded the decision for. He got a decision victory for that, but everyone who watched it was kind of outraged because it was so clear that Marquez had actually won that fight. So I actually think of that as a loss to Pacquiao. But then, funnily enough, his next fight, where he completely dominated and clearly beat Timothy Bradley, the judges disagreed and said it was a loss, and so he technically lost to Timothy Bradley in that fight. He then went on to fight Juan Manuel Marquez for the 4th time because people were so outraged about that 3rd fight and Pacquiao getting the decision, even though he actually lost the fight, and Marquez knocked him out clean, cold. He then went on to fight Brandon Rios. Really, really exciting young fighter. He completely dominated Rios. Rios wasn't ready for that fight. I don't know if he ever will be. Then went on to fight Timothy Bradley again, dominated him. And then his last fight was against Chris Algiera, who is a really awkward, amateurish looking guy, and I really don't know why he was in the ring with Pacquiao. But that's their careers leading up to this point. And if you ask me, back around about the time with the Margarito fight, I would have said I really believed Pacquiao had a good chance of beating Mayweather. Now, my prediction is that this fight is going to be a 12-round decision win for Mayweather. I believe that Mayweather will just be... he'll be too accurate for Pacquiao. He'll hold Pacquiao at a distance. He'll duck down below the waist and, you know, do that awkward thing he does and kind of lean forward and prevent Pacquiao from getting off flurries of punches. He'll walk forward and just stick out that jab to the stomach and, you know, come straight in with the right. And I really think that Pacquiao is going to struggle to... What Pacquiao likes to do is come at you from different angles, and what you need for that is a guy who's going to either come forward to you in a non-defensive stance, you know, going to come forward, someone like a Hatton or someone like a Brandon Rios or a Canelo Alvarez or a Cotto, someone who's going to come forward trying to fight you. That means you can kind of pivot and swing to their left or their right and open them up a bit while they're throwing punches. But Mayweather doesn't do that. He walks at you with that Philly shell, and it's just really hard to break down, and he's not going to be able to utilise his biggest weapon, which is throwing flurries of punches from different angles. And I really, really think he's going to struggle to get off these combinations, and he's going to spend too many rounds trying to figure out Floyd Mayweather rather than just throwing punches, as we see so many times. You know, these guys who, you know, the thing about Floyd Mayweather is you see so many guys go in against him and they fight completely different to the way they've fought their entire career. Because when you're in the ring with Mayweather, his style and his just everything he does is just an art form, and it's just really, really hard to adapt to that. And I think Mayweather is going to just win by a points decision. I don't think he's going to go out there and knock Pacquiao out. I really don't see that happen. I don't see Pacquiao knocking Mayweather out either, because Pacquiao has not knocked anyone out in a long time, and he's not looked like he's going to... I mean, he couldn't even knock Chris Algiera out, or, you know, who else was he fighting recently? You know, Bradley is quite a hard guy to... Well, you know, he's Brandon Rios. I think he could have finished, but he didn't look like he wanted to press. I don't know if he's going to have a more... I don't know if he's going to be a lot more hyped up for this fight and he's going to really go for it, but the only way Pacquiao can win is if he can somehow get these punches in from different angles, and if he can kind of rough Floyd up, and if he can keep moving. He has to constantly move. He has to constantly pivot to the right, pivot to the left, and just keep Floyd... You know, his southpaw stance will help him a little bit, but he'll just need to keep moving and moving all the time, throwing punches non-stop. As soon as he stops throwing punches, don't stand and wait for Floyd to put that jab into the stomach. Don't wait for Floyd to lean forward with the straight right. He needs to just pivot and move, and as soon as he throws a flurry of punches, move to the right, step away, then wait till he's got his energy back, come back in again and do the same, and just constantly do it every second of every round if he can. That's the only way he can win. And I don't see him, based on his previous performances, you know, in his last 5-6 fights, I really don't see him managing to do that. We know, we've heard things about him having leg cramps and all this. I don't know how much of that I believe, but yeah, so my prediction is that Floyd Mayweather will win by a 12-round decision. It's kind of interesting to see that Alex Ariza is in Mayweather's camp. We all know Alex Ariza was kind of... the guy in Pacquiao's camp for a long time throughout the best run of his career, and then after Ariza left, you know, he started having problems, and a lot of people used to accuse Pacquiao of being on performance-enhancing drugs, and mainly because of Ariza. And it's kind of funny just to see him in Mayweather's corner now, but yeah, I'm so hyped up for this fight, guys. I'm really, really excited. I hope it lives up to the hype. I hope we get a really good fight. And let me know in the comments what you guys think is going to be the prediction. But I really can't see it going any other way than a Floyd Mayweather 12-round decision. Thanks for listening, guys.